Okay. Yay. Okay. Let's see. So, uh, oh, okay. We're live. Great. Okay. So video capture, I don't know why my camera's not working. Hey, there we go. Yay! 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 Hooray! Okay, good deal. So let's do this. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. And boom. Hi, this is Vision Mage Entertainment. There we are live. It says rookie. Why does it say that? Let's edit that. We can do that live. Live. Oh, okay. I'm gonna fix that right quick. Hi, I'm Mike Rogers. So let's go to camera is so in the way. How about your channel? That'll work. And what are we looking for? We are looking for the description on our last live video. And let me grab the description. save. A much better. So let's do this. No, we'll do it here. Playlists. Like videos, beautiful. Okay.
Plot character. Most people think of a subplot character as a kind. Many audiences never consider how important a great screenwriter is to a movie. They may not realize how much the director and actors take their cues from the script, or think about why some scenes are exciting and others are boring. Because the hardest part about screenwriting isn't having an idea for a story. It's figuring out how to tell that story in a compelling way. Today we're looking at Gone Girl, for which Gillian Flynn had the difficult task of adapting her novel.
So if you have not seen Gone Girl, amazing. Amazingly crazy. If you've seen the movie Gone Girl's a crazy ass movie, but extremely well written. For some reason, I always remember the opening scene where he's explaining to the girl in the bar, the bartender, who's a friend of his, maybe his sister, that this girl's disappeared, blah, blah, blah. I think that's how that starts. But the one thing that I remember about that, the one thing I specifically remember about that scene is she's pulling out like some board game. And I just kept thinking about this bar where there's this bartender who's this chick where you go and play board games, and it was so local and so specific. I was like, oh, but brilliant movie. One movie that tried to be Gone Girl and totally failed was Girl on a Train.
Into a modern film noir thriller.
I did not kill my wife.
The screenplay is very well crafted and mixes traditional storytelling methods with her own personal style to create a unique story world. Let's take a look at a few techniques Gillian Flynn used in her fantastic screenplay for Gone Girl. Number 1. Efficient action lines. Nick shrugs. Who?
Did you do it? Did you do it?
Point taken. In a script, action lines describe what is happening. They're important because they help the director translate scenes from script to screen, and Gillian Flynn writes great action lines. In this scene, she efficiently sets the tone in just 2 sentences.
Mr. Dunn, Mr. Collins.
Desi doesn't invite him in. Strange charge in the air. Desi thinks Nick is guilty. Nick thinks Desi is innocent.
You might not think that you could do that. That you could say Desi doesn't invite him in. That you can write things that don't happen. Very unique, very weird. In screenplays, everything you write, you don't have a lot of room. So you have to be very specific as to what you write, especially in the action lines or the description lines. Writing things that don't happen is very interesting. I've never seen it done before, except for this. Desi doesn't invite him in. Strange charge in the air. Desi thinks Nick is guilty. Nick thinks Desi is innocent. None of that is... Those are almost actor's notes. That is very weird and not really used.
And a few lines later,
I always wondered why you kept in touch after everything.
Desi gives him nothing. While it's up to the director and actor, in this case Neil Patrick Harris, to decide how to portray this on screen, this action line serves as a guide. And if you watch the scene with this action line in mind, you see that NPH truly gives him nothing.
Neil Patrick
Your
Harris.
wife is missing, and you came all this way to tell me this.
Well, I thought there might be another side to this story.
You may notice that dialogue in the final film is different from the script. This happens frequently. The director, writer, or actor changes something on set. This is why it's so important for the writer to set the tone of the scene in the script, so anyone making changes understands the context and intention of the original line. For example, at the end of the scene, Flynn writes, "Ugly pause." Desi shuts the door on Nick. The phrase "ugly pause" is such a great way to describe a moment. It implies tone and pacing in just 2 words. Gillian Flynn's action lines are descriptive, concise, and full of personality. The second technique I want to talk about is, the last line is the point of the scene. In Anatomy of Story by John Truby, a screenwriting book I highly recommend, he writes, "The beginning of the scene should frame what the whole scene is about. The scene should then funnel down to a single point, with the most important word or line of dialogue stated."
Way too specific. Way too specific. I'm not a huge fan of John Truby, first of all. And second of all, I don't think you can do this. I don't think it's possible. I mean, I think Aaron Sorkin writes this way. That you start with this big, broad question type thing, and then you narrow it down to the essence of what we're looking for. And it's brilliant. And it works in the example they're about to give us, because a cop is questioning somebody about something, and that's how a cop would do something. They start with this big broad thing, and then they bring it all the way down to this minor significant point. That's the only point that they needed. The only detail that they needed was this one detail, but they needed to start out here to get to there. You can't do that with every scene. So he's saying do it in every scene. It's impossible. And it would again screw up your story. So you can't read. I tried to read every screenplay book and follow every rule. Impossible. You're just gonna fuck yourself. Excuse my French.
Last, he uses an upside-down triangle to represent the idea. Let's apply the triangle to one of the best scenes in Gone Girl.
Hello!
The first line of the scene is,
"Did you know she was pregnant?"
which immediately frames what the whole scene is about. What does Nick actually know? What is he lying about? This scene is about Nick realizing how much trouble he's in. Let's watch as Flynn makes the scene funnel toward a single point.
I see it as want and need. So Nick wants, and when I do the want and need thing, usually what I say is the character wants something. The character wants something. They're driven by the want. But slowly what is revealed is the character's need as the story goes on. And in this story, so you have a situation where a character has a want, and they're driven by the want, but the need will slowly be revealed, and that will be their weakness. That'll be everything. That'll be the pinnacle of the story, is them, not the pinnacle of the story, but them revealing their need, understanding their need, and then either pursuing their need or pursuing their want. I mean, you can either go either way at the end. What we see in this scene, the detective wants something. Nick needs to protect himself. The detective wants information. There's always need and want. So you could say there's a funneling of information that they're getting down to this point, and that's more of a tool of dialogue than it is a tool of storytelling. So it's all want and need. This is my point. I will make that in my lectures, in the class that I'm teaching. I go into that a lot further, that everything is want and need. But just in this case, you're seeing one character wants something, the other character needs to One character wants something and another character has a need. And those two things are always going to conflict.
This area right here, it looked wrong from the second we saw it. Whole thing looked staged. I mean, watch this.
Nick begins to understand that all of the evidence points to him. The news tightens.
We gotta look at your finances, Nick. $117,000 in credit card debt.
What?
And tightens.
In April, you bumped up Amy's life insurance to $1.2 million.
Yes, I did. That was her idea. She wanted me to.
You filed the paperwork.
Because she told me to! Whoa.
And tightens until finally,
She was pregnant.
Nick wails, grabs his highball glass, throws it at the wall.
So, my question becomes...
I don't want to talk to you again. Ever. Without a lawyer.
Boom. The scene culminates in a single point as Nick finally realizes the trouble that he's in. He makes a new decision and the story moves right along. That's good screenwriting. If you look for it, you'll notice most good scenes follow this simple rule. The last topic I want to cover is one of the most misunderstood story techniques, the subplot character. Most people think of a subplot character as a kind of other protagonist in a separate storyline, but this is incorrect. Again, quoting John Truby, the subplot character provides another opportunity to define the hero through comparison and advance the plot. Basically, it's a character that is dealing with the same problem as the protagonist, but in a different way. Of the two subplot characters in Gone Girl, one is in the movie for a single scene.
Tommy? Yeah.
By comparing the protagonist, Nick, with this subplot character, the writer can reveal information and demonstrate how certain choices may play out.
She said I raped her. First degree felony rape.
The first comparison. Amy is framing Nick for murder, and she'd previously framed Tommy for rape. This is new information for both Nick and the audience. Amy has a history of this behavior. The second comparison.
Girl's like a fixer-upper, but Amy, she annexed me. She made me her business. It was just too much.
Amy lashed out at Tommy after he stopped trying to be the man she wanted him to be. This is an important lesson for Nick because eventually he realizes this is how he can get Amy to come back, by going on TV and pretending to be the man she wants him to be again. Nick is learning from Tommy's experience. And the final comparison.
Next morning, there's two cops at my door. Amy has wounds that are consistent with rape. Ligature marks on her wrists and my semen. It looks like I tied Amy to my bed and raped her. Me.
Tommy underestimated the extreme lengths that Amy could go to. This is essentially a warning for Nick. Amy is crazy enough to get away with this.
What's the point of the subplot character?
In just one scene, Gillian Flynn is able to use the Tommy character to give Nick and the audience new information, and show a glimpse of what could happen to Nick if he's not careful. And, because she's a good screenwriter, the scene ends at the point.
Did you ever see her again? Yeah, on TV last week with you. I thought, there's Amy. She's graduated from being raped to being murdered.
I really appreciate films that respect the audience, where you can tell the people that made it really care about creating an entertaining experience. The screenplay for Gone Girl is a great example of how to use simple, classic storytelling techniques to do exactly that. Thanks for watching Lessons from the Screenplay. If you have a suggestion for a script I should analyze in the future, leave a comment below. And if you want more insights into great screenplays, be sure to like this video and subscribe.
Hi, I'm Seth Rogen,
And I'm Evan Goldberg.
and this is Screenwriting 101. Pick an idea that you really like, because it takes a long time to write a movie and a lot of energy, and some people like lose steam on their own ideas just because they slowly realize they don't like them as much as they hope they did. So pick an idea that you are really passionate about, and that will help you finish to what Evan's saying.
Have a premise. Once you have those other things figured out, have a strong premise that you stick to.
An idea can come from anywhere and start as anything, and we've had movies where it's born of like characters, and we've had other movies where it's born of like a plot, and then the characters are kind of made to fit that plot. We've had and a story almost.
Sausage Party started as a title.
Exactly. I was going to say literally, Sausage Party started as a title, and we made a movie based around that.
Generally commit to the 3-act structure, but we also break all sorts of rules all the time. There are some things that are repeat themes in everything we do. Like characters need to change for people.
Yeah, that would
not
be good.
care.
That's a good, yeah.
And something relatable. Like I've seen some movies recently about like all powerful gods, stuff like that, and like you need something to anchor a human being to. But any rule can be broken. They're just like basic guidelines
That's
that you can just shatter them if the moment's right. But usually characters changing.
In general, characters changing and some version of a 3-act structure, even if you're just
Something to root for. Some cause, someone you want to have something they don't.
Almost every art is born of contrast, and so I think like films are no different. It's like combining different elements, and that's what makes the other element be featured, and so I think it is just modulating how funny is it versus how dramatic. And
I guess
thing,
and one of the things is you have to try to pretend you're experiencing it. Similar sense, like with this being, we thought we'll do an end of the world thing with Sausage Party. We thought we'll do like a Pixar kind of thing, but ultimately, like they have to be simple stories that would work if they weren't animated or they didn't have beats or they didn't have great visual effects or wild comedy. And so this is the end is just about like a guy who has new friends and his old buddy doesn't mesh with them, and he just really wants everyone to get along, and they're not. And Sausage Party is about someone who goes on a hero's journey to try to like help everybody realize that they're living a lie. And they're just like simple things that could work in a plain drama, and that has to be there or nothing works.
I think some scenes, function better than others, and some scenes have more opportunity for improvisation than others do. And some actors are much better at improv than others and are actually able to create additive material, and other actors are completely unable to do that, and therefore it's not something you should call on them for or rely on them for. So it's not like a general. I would never advise everyone to like write a scene not great and be like, don't worry, we'll improvise this better on the day. Like that is not a good strategy. Like it should always be written as though no one's ever going to come up with anything better, and if someone does, fantastic, but you should never count on that, I don't think.
World by world dependent. Like, and this is the end, we thought it really had to make sense, and there was some broadness there, but we thought it needed to be real. And in Sausage Party, we had like never-ending conversations about the reality of anthropomorphized toys and other things and other things.
Yeah, we're like, okay, if the toilet paper can talk, yeah, why can't the forks talk? Why can't the table talk?
And why don't the sheets of toilet paper
talk? Can the chair talk? Yeah, like,
so a piece of pizza talks, but it's cheese and tomato sauce and bread. Did they talk before it became?
Yeah, did they talk? Yeah, so we have all the conversations, but eventually you just have to draw the line somewhere, and every movie has a different line, but there probably should be some sort of line, because the audience does like to understand the rules of the world that they're experiencing,
I would say often the last scene in a film
that is true. Hard. The very last scene of a movie is sometimes the hardest scene to write.
Yeah, because you're trying to say like here's the same thing you've been enjoying the whole movie in one of the best ways you've had it the whole movie, but also everyone's changed, so it's always a little tricky. But when you nail it.
Exactly, like, what do you want to leave people with? You know what I mean? Like, what is the last, like, whatever it is, no matter what, it leaves a big impression. So there's a lot of pressure on the very beginning and the very end of a movie are both the hardest and most important parts in a lot of ways.
There's hundreds of drafts, and it never stops, and it's a never-ending, transforming, painful, fun experience.
We've probably done like 50 drafts of the script we're writing since the beginning of quarantine. And there was probably 50 drafts before that.
Yeah, and ones where we like wildly change things more than you would probably think. Like we change things a lot because we just want
I want a place to
to
stop
see
it.
it.
Yeah, we try not to be precious about our writing, and at times we found it's faster to just write something and see if it works than to spend a lot of time deliberating.
One thing I found is that's so daunting. That's so daunting. Like you have to write 50 freaking drafts. That's insane. Like I don't you know, get the first one done first. I You should really just get the one story done first and then go from there. It's crazy that I just think it's nuts that people expect you to be like, "Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I haven't even written a screenplay yet. You expect me to write 50 drafts of that screenplay." That's not going to happen unless you're a professional screenwriter or you sell a screenplay. And even if in that case, you might just write a screenplay, you sell the idea, and then writers who work for that company rewrite the screenplay 50 times. Um, they, it's odd that it is odd that a production company will hire the people who wrote the screenplay to do the final drafts on the screenplay, especially if yeah, I mean, if you're Seth Rogen, maybe not, but usually they'll buy it for like a little bit of money and then they'll just rewrite it. They'll have other people rewrite it. You won't be rewriting it. So don't listen to this. Don't be daunted by, oh my God, I have to write this damn thing 50 times.
Whether maybe or not it is going to work.
Half the time it's not going to work and you realize it as you're doing it, and the other half you finish it and then you realize it. But
Yeah,
you get
exactly.
stuff from it.
But I think like demystifying the actual act of writing is something that, thank God, happened to us a long time ago because just we've been doing it so long. So we're not incredibly precious with like the movement of our fingers on a keyboard. Like if there's a version of a scene where we're like, oh, what if we completely changed this part of the movie and took out this scene and then wrote another scene, and that we'll just do it rather than kind of deliberating it for a super long time. One person generally feels way stronger about it than the other person. Like, it's like we will be disagreeing on a thing, and one of us feels like 10 degrees about it, and the other feels like 2 degrees about it. So it's never that hard of an argument either, because, like, generally the person who just cares way, way, way more will win the argument.
And it often ends with the other person just saying, like, you care more, I'm out, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's like, and again, and it's not like there's a lot of times for to come back to that, whatever.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that, like there's things where I'll be like, he'll find out that he's wrong in a year and a half. Like,
yeah, exactly.
We're sitting in a pre-production meeting, like that's what I'm gonna be right about this point. Like we know we have the long game, so there's no panic to be right more in a short period of time.
Definitely. A good screenwriting quote that I've read that I think of a lot is like, a script is not a work of art. A script is an invitation to come collaborate on a work of art. And a screenplay itself is nothing. So, like, but what a screenplay should be is something that hundreds of people read and are inspired by and want to come together to help bring something new to life, and that's what you should think of a screenplay as, is it is not the finished product.
This was a Friday night in New York. I'm in the studio apartment. No friends are around. The TV isn't working. The stereo isn't working. There's no such thing as the internet. I didn't have $3 in my pocket. What I had was my friend's grandfather's semi-automatic typewriter, which also had paper in it. So the only way for me to entertain myself was to stick a piece of paper in this typewriter, and I did what I'd never done before, which was that I wrote in dialogue. And I stayed up all night. That was the moment that I fell in love with the sound of my own voice.
What is it like directing an Aaron Sorkin screenplay as opposed to others?
There's a lot more of it. That's the biggest thing. Then normally, you get a script, it's like 100, 120 pages, and half of that will be descriptions about how to do things, which you then work out how to ignore, if you can, as a film director. But in this, there's none of that description because there's no room for it. There's just 185 pages of dialogue.
Dialogue is the least teachable part of writing. It's also the most personal part of writing. I grew up in a great family. Everyone in my family is smarter than I am. Everyone in my circle of friends were smarter than I am. I really enjoyed the sound of smart people trying to convince each other of something. The sound of, yeah, but have you thought of it this way? People playing devil's advocate. And then while that was going on, my parents would take me to see plays all the time. And often I was too young to understand what was happening on stage. They'd take me to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf when I was 9 years old or something. But I loved the sound of dialogue. I loved the sound of these great actors and actresses, fantastic language crashing into each other. It sounded like music to me, and I wanted to imitate that sound. It's not just that dialogue sounds like music to me. It actually is music. Anytime that you're speaking out loud for the sake of performance, those words, what you're saying, have all of the properties of music. Dialogue has rhythm, and pitch, and tone, and volume, and meter, and it absolutely has all the properties of music. And so there are musical rules that apply. If you're in 4/4 time, there have to be 4 beats in measure. There can't be 3, there can't be 5. So
You put time signatures on your dialogue?
I do not put them there, but they are there, which is why the actor will know that if he or she has dropped a word from a line or substituted a 2-syllable word with a 1-syllable word, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound as good. The joke doesn't work. It's the snappy comeback isn't as snappy.
When you get an Aaron script, whether it's an episode of Newsroom.
When I make these videos using AI, and it's text to voice, and you can hear it when you put in the voice. You can hear the dialogue, so you know what dialogue works and what dialogue doesn't. And with the AI, if you use too short of words, then it doesn't work. You have to use longer words. You really have to extend everything out so that there's a semblance to it, so that it flows. And I think you have to do that with your writing as well. One thing that I used to do was when I wrote my screenplays is now you can do this text to now you can use this text to voice, where you put in the text and it reads it in a voice that, it's still kind of computery, but you can listen to it. I used to do just to have the computer read it back to me, and it was just like that, and it was very hard to listen to, and it would put me to sleep a lot. But if something was wrong, you would hear it right away. So if you're writing and you want to hear what it sounds like, try to find a program that is text to speech, I guess, AI text to speech, and you can put it in there and they'll read it back to you in a different voice, and you can really hear how it sounds.
Or jobs, it's daunting, and that there's only one way to do it, and there's a kind of You know, on movies, you can paraphrase, you can kind of sort of know it. That's not what you do with Aaron. It's like what you do in the theater. You don't change a word. The playwright is king or queen, and forget about ad-libbing.
That's what men do. Can't stop late.
Before you started shooting, you and David Fincher spent 3 weeks in a room with your principal actors, with Andrew Garfield, Jesse Eisenberg, Justin Timberlake, and you went through the script word by word by word, just rehearsing through the lines, talking about the meaning behind every single word on the page. Was it your impression that Fincher normally follows that process, or was it because this was such a dialogue-intensive film that he wanted the actors to spend more time with the words on the page?
It was because it was such a dialogue-intensive film. Do you know there are more people with genius IQs living in China than there are people of any kind living in the United States? That can't possibly be true. It is. What would account for that? Well, first of all, there are an awful lot of people living in China, but here's my point. How do you distinguish yourself in a population of people who all got 1,600 on their SATs? Yeah, first 10 lines. Yes, I am very physical when I'm writing. I play all the parts. I'm doing a lot of talking out loud. One of the things I think that helps with is you are less likely to write a line of dialogue that's unspeakable. I love you, my dear, like the stars love once you have to say it out loud, you'll get the message that you can't ask an actor to try to casualize that line. When I'm writing, I am talking out loud. I'm playing all the parts in my head. And if it's going well, I'm jumping up and down from my desk, walking around. I once broke my nose writing. I'm constantly trying to start arguments with myself because you're always looking for where's the point of friction. Two people have to disagree on something for there to be a scene. Sometime.
Want and need. That's the one thing I always say is that it's want and need. Within the character and within the relationships. So in your character is going to have a want. It's the entire reason you have a story to begin with, is that a person wants something. And that person goes on a journey of want. What we find during that journey of want is that they run into what they actually need. They run into that thing like a brick wall, and it's in conflict with what they want. So what they want is always basically a shortcut to what they really need, and they always, they run into that, and then how they deal with that is really determines what kind of person they are, what kind of character they have, what do they do when they're faced with the fact that you want this thing, but what you're really expressing is a need that is completely fundamental to you being a functioning or non-functioning human being. There's also, within the story, you're going to have relationships that are built on want and need. Your character wants something. Other characters in the story need them to do something else. They have needs. They have wants and needs as well. We're not really going to look at those other characters' wants and needs. We're just going to look at those characters' needs. We're basically going to look at how our main character's wants affect the people's needs around him, because they're all going to come in conflict with him.
I invent a piece of dialogue in my head, and then I kind of keep going. 20, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours of doing that, I'll realize, I really should be writing this down. Write down those first 2 lines of dialogue that I was thinking of. Type the first 2 lines of dialogue.
That's energy at work there. And I really think that energy makes its way onto the page. That once you're loaded up, you really write as quickly as you can. You don't know what you're doing if the lines are coming out like, honey dripping from a jar. Stop, put it down. You don't know what you're doing yet.
To get one good idea, your mind has to flip through a Rolodex of 50,000 bad ideas to get there. So I go through my days and nights seeing really bad movies in my head. I mean, that's
I hate it when people talk about you had to get to 50. There's 50 versions of the screenplay, or 50 rewrites on the screenplay, or there's 50,000 bad movies that I had right before I got to the right one. I don't feel that that's true. I really don't. I think all your ideas are part of a bigger idea. So every one of those quote unquote bad ideas is a symptom leads you to the better ideas. I just don't think that they're bad ideas. There's too much. There's too much emphasis put on. You know, it's not as big as they're making it out to be. It really isn't. Screenplays are 75% dialogue. So dialogue is very important. Aaron Sorkin is considered one of the best people in writing dialogue that there ever was. A lot of it's fast talk. I did not enjoy that movie with Jeffrey. What's it, the movie about? Not Facebook. Was it about Facebook? The movie about Facebook. I did not really enjoy the performances in that movie. The talking very fast, I don't believe is. If you ever watched the show The West Wing, which I don't know why you would, it's like 1,000 years old right now. They just talk really fast. People are walking and talking. You know, Aaron Sorkin will admit to the fact that he did a lot of cocaine in the 80s. So a lot of his stuff is really fast paced and really like and like the example that they just gave us came from the network, social network. I don't know. There's a lot of fast talk there, and I'm not getting much out of it. You know, I don't know. Don't try to write the next great American novel. Just write what you want to write, and then see how it comes out. You know, because you don't know. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, Aaron Sorkin, I gotta write like Aaron Sorkin. I gotta find the pace and the tone, and it's got to be fast, it's got to be delivered, it's got to be short, it's got to be fit, it got to be that. It doesn't have to be any of those things. The movies that I've honestly seen get made and bought in the time that I've been doing this, I paid no attention to any one of the rules you'll ever hear being played. These are all great suggestions, and it's great to get your mind in the writing framework, but a lot of these suggestions are a little overblown.
And I'm in that kind of mood. I do nothing but stream through bad dialogue, bad scenes, bad everything until just I accidentally fall on, wait a second, that's what it was I was looking for. When I'm writing, what the words sound like are as important to me as what the words mean. Script every sound that's made, all the verbal hiccups.
Okay, so the other thing too is that this man is not only as a writer, he's being asked to explain pretty much everything he's ever written. So he's doing these interviews over and over and over again. So he has to keep saying these things over and over and over again. And if you keep listening to it over and over and over again, he's basically just saying the same thing once. But you're being pounded with it, and it's hitting your brain, and your brain is like, okay, how do I deal with this information? But I just don't think that these people need to be taken as seriously as what they're saying doesn't need to affect your work as much as you would think that it needs to.
All the ums and ahs. Jessica has a line in the movie.
I was a brat.
But the line actually is...
I was a brat.
And it's written M-M-M-M-M-M-M. I was a brat. I like when people interrupt themselves. I love overlapping dialogue. I love the sound of two people talking at once. So I'll write dual or even triple dialogue sometimes.
Because that's what you told Lieutenant Kendrick to do. Object! And when it went bad, you cut these guys loose! Your Honor, you had markets inside a phony transfer. Your Honor, you doctored the logbook. Damn, Captain! You coerced the document.
Consider yourself in contempt.
Colonel Jessup, did you order the code red?
I love writing more than anything else, and getting to do what you love is a tremendous gift. getting recognized for something you've done. And that's the cherry on the icing on the cake.
If you love to travel, Capital...
It's weird, just skip the commercial.
Dyson's new robot vacuum is the most powerful. Its extending side duct, sucking up dust right to the edge, and...
Kevin Powers asks, anybody have good recommendations for a story planning app? Not scripting, but a good tool to put story pieces together. First of all, when they said screenwriter support, I thought you were going to be giving me the support. I didn't know it was the other way around. I've actually never heard of a story planning app. That might be showing my age. Hi, this is Aaron Sorkin, and this is Screenwriter Support. All right, Holly Jack. People who write stuff. How do you approach second drafts? Blank page and start again? Amendments to what you've already got? Any thoughts, tips would be appreciated. Yeah, great. Second drafts are really important. A friend of mine once said about me that I don't write scripts, I rewrite scripts. And here's what he meant.
Daunting. Very daunting. You haven't even sat down to write the script. You haven't even purchased or even just tried to sit down and open up a Word document and just make a script. You haven't even tried that, and somebody's telling that you've already got to rewrite it. I don't write scripts, I rewrite scripts. And then what are you supposed to be doing? I don't know. It's definitely a process you have to go through, but it's not a process that needs to be explained to you right off the bat when you first started trying to write a screenplay that you're going to have to rewrite this thing. I hated to hear that. Let me get this done. Let me see what I've done. Let me try to understand what I'm saying before you're like, I don't know. It feels like I don't know. It feels like you're be prepared to throw away the thing you're about to write. Well, I haven't even written it yet. So the rewriting is definitely necessary, and it's something that you need to do, but the emphasis on it is a little, it's going to stop you from writing.
In the process of writing the first draft, by the time you get to the end, you've sort of discovered what the movie is about. Because it may not end up, that first draft, being about what you thought it was going to be about when you started writing it. You plotted a course to go due north. But as you were going, you started going a little bit east and then a little bit more east, and when you end up, you're going northeast. So you figured out what the script is about. It's probably fat. It's probably long. Go back to the beginning of the script. Start writing it over again. Peel away the things that don't have anything to do with your story. Hang a lantern on the things that you need to bring into relief in the story. You're going to discover that a problem that you have in the third act isn't really in the third act. It's because you didn't set it up properly in the first. So, second drafts, I say, retype the whole thing. Sharpen up that joke that's kind of clunky. Sharpen up that dialogue that's kind of clunky. Get it down to its fighting weight. That's what I do anyway. Thanks a lot for the question. Quentin says, what's key? Focusing on creating the plot, story world, character, or etc. When writing a script? Here's what's key in creating drama. Intention and obstacle. That's what you've got to cling to. Somebody wants something standing in their way of getting it. They want the money. They want the girl. They want to get to Philadelphia. They want to win the big game. They want to save someone's life. If somebody wants something formidable is standing in the way of getting it. The tactics that your protagonist uses to try to overcome that obstacle or those series of obstacles. That is what's going to create your character. Because you're not going to tell us who this character is. You're going to show us what this character wants. It doesn't matter if they succeed or fail.
I gotta start. I'm sorry.
The plot, story world, character.
So what's key? What's key? I'm focusing on creating the plot, story world, character, or etc. when writing a script. What's key focusing on? Is that a question? What's key focusing on creating a plot, story world, character, etc.? That's not a question. It's a series of words with a question mark at the end. The fact that he even came up with an intelligent answer for this is amazing.
Or etc. When writing a script, here's what's key in creating drama: intention and obstacle. That's what you've got to cling to. Somebody wants something standing in their way of getting it. They want the money. They want the girl. They want to get to Philadelphia. They want to win the big game. They want to save someone's life. If somebody wants something formidable is standing in the way of getting it. The tactics that your protagonist uses to try to overcome that obstacle or those series of obstacles, that is what's going to create your character. Because you're not going to tell us.
So I say it in a different way. It could be the exact same thing, but I say it in a different way. The big hairy monster that your character is coming up against is the need. So your character has a want, okay? Your character has a want. He wants to win the big game. He wants to get the girl. He wants to whatever. He wants to get the money. But he requires a need. Why? Behind every want is a why. If you want something, you want it for a reason. And usually has nothing to do with the reason your want and your desire are two different things. So you want to win the big game so that people admire you, so that you have the admiration of people. So your want fuels your desire. But your need is what is going to determine your character. So, character wants to go out and win the big game, so he has the admiration of people, and so he has admiration from people. But what he really needs is the love of his father, and that's what's missing. If he had the love of his father, he wouldn't have to go out and try to win the big game to get admiration for everybody, because he would just have it at home. He would be happy at home. He could go home and have the love of his family and know that he's okay. Be scared with things and go on with his life. That's the need. The need in his life is to have the love of his family. But his want is to win the big game. Why? So that he can get admiration for people. Why? Because something is missing from his life. Our wants and our desires, our wants fuel our desires. We have a want, which is fueled by a desire. We want to win the game because we desire to be admired by people. Our needs kind of come in and kick that whole thing in the ass, because what our needs are, our needs have nothing to do with our wants and our desires. Our needs are what we actually need. Our needs are the things in our life that will determine us being good people. Our wants and desires are the things that are going to sway us away from being good people. And I'll try to make a better case about that in the future, but I believe that's exactly what he's saying.
Us who this character is, you're going to show us what this character wants. It doesn't matter if they succeed or fail in their quest. It matters to you. It doesn't matter to storytelling. It's just as good a story if they fail as if they succeed. What matters is that the intention be important to them, and that we understand why it's important to them. And the obstacles have to be real. Tension and obstacle. Thanks a lot, Gwen. Caitlin Greenridge says, if you are writing a marginalized character whose identity you do not share, can you imagine your way into that character through their joy and not their imagined trauma? Yes, you can. Empathy, right? Same blood that goes through your body goes through that person. We all have, as humans, the power to empathize with each other, to understand each other's lives, and to put any character we want into a dramatic situation, because the most important thing in your story isn't going to be someone's sexual orientation, their skin color, their religion, whether they are able-bodied or disabled. The most important thing is in your story is going to be intention and obstacle. What does this character want, and what's standing in the way of getting it? And I assume that because you're interested in telling this story, you are interested in what the character wants and what's standing in their way of getting it, or you think it's a great comic premise with which you can use your sense of humor, or you think it's a great premise with which to tell a murder mystery, or a romantic comedy, or anything like that. But I really think it's important that writers not start to get cautious because they're scared of being offensive. Stereotypes should be avoided, whether it's, as you say, someone from a diverse population or someone who looks exactly like you. You want to avoid all kinds of stereotypes, not just because of racial or ethnic sensitivity. Stereotypes are just bad in writing. I can be different in every possible way, but if that person is a father, I'm a father. If that person is also a father, I feel like I know everything about them that's important to know, that you can know as a stranger. I can empathize with that person.
Our smallest Virtuo machine ever. Now every Nook can be a coffee Nook. Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Small machine, big taste.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited.
Don't want to judge that person. You want to defend that person. You want to be able to make that person's case to God why they should be allowed into heaven. Do not feel that you are required to write about yourself and your world. Write about any world you want. You're making the world. Sorry, I don't mean to be yelling at you. I'm just passionate about this. Okay? You, ma'am, are...
I am writing a story about painting, called Painting, because I am a painter. That's what I do for a living. The story has near nothing to do with me. I am not a story in that. I'm not a character in that story. There are events in my life that are portrayed in that story. That character's not me. I don't understand the I don't understand why you'd even do it. I don't understand why you put yourself in the story. I don't even understand how that is possible. Like, how you even got taught to do that. It's called fan fiction. And it's ruined a lot of entertainment. Yeah.
Not confined by any guardrails. Thank you for your question, Caitlin. Okay, so Matthew Ward says, if you could write an episode for one TV show, which one would you choose? I'm very curious. I'm glad you asked, Matthew, because it's a more complicated question than you might think. One of my all-time favorite TV shows, The Office. I like the BBC Office too, but I'm a super fan of the American Office, the NBC Office. So you would think I would want to write an episode of that, right? Except I think I'd do badly. I think I'd make The Office less good, so it would be self-defeating. If I could go back in time, I think I'd like to write an episode of MASH. I was late to catch up to Schitt's Creek, and just started watching it. I totally get all the hype. It's fantastic. That's another show I would love to write for those actors, but would not do the actors or the show any favors by doing so. So I would love to go back to an episode of television I've written and write it all over again. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the question. Lisa Dubois, real question. Are TV writing rooms just RP sessions? I'm not sure what an RP... Oh, role-playing sessions. Are different writers in charge of different characters on shows like some kind of Sex and the City D&D? Okay, that's a great question. I don't think that happens on any show, but the reason I'm not sure what the answer is because the way most other writers' rooms work is that at the beginning of the season, several months before production starts, the writers meet every day, and they try to break a whole season arc, whether it's 22 on network TV or 13 on...
So, the writers are hired to work on a show to begin with. They don't sit there and try to come up with the idea for a show. Somebody came up with an idea for a show. A production company bought a screenplay or bought a script or bought an idea for a show. Got put into production. Pre-production, they hired a showrunner. Showrunner probably had some, or if not all, of the say in who were the writers in the writing room. They hire the writers. They sit down. The showrunner says, and the producers say, this is what we're doing. This is why you're here. This is why you were hired to do this thing. And then this happens.
Premium cable, that we want to start here and end here. So if we're going to end here, that means by Christmas we need to be here. So by Thanksgiving we need to be here. Then they get more granular. Okay, so we need to do this by episode 1, this by episode 2. And they'll simply assign, you take episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. I want you to turn in story pitches in 5 days, and a week after that it's going to go to outline, and a week after that it's going to go to first draft, and then the showrunner ultimately runs it through there. The writer's rooms...
It's beautiful. That's the least daunting thing I've heard. Because the steps that it goes through. You're given an episode, right? But you're not like what? I gotta write an entire fucking episode for a television show? Excuse my French? No, you don't. What he said was,
we need to be here. Then they get more granular. Okay, so we need to do this by episode 1, this by episode 2. And they'll simply assign, you take episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. I want you to turn in story pitches in 5 days, and a week after that...
Okay, so story pitches. 5 days from now, you have story pitches on your episode. What is your episode going to be about? We know what the arcing thing is. We know what episode you have. We know where we're supposed to be in the story on your episode. Give me story pitches. Okay. That's a week. An entire week on story pitches. Then we do a week on outlining. An entire week on outlining your story pitches. Now, you haven't written shit yet. All you did was come up with storylines. Now you're doing an outline.
It's going to go to outline, and a week after that it's going to go to first draft.
And then it's going to go to first draft. So, 3 weeks after your story pitch ideas, you're finally writing your first draft.
And then the showrunner ultimately runs it through there.
So, the thing is that is not daunting. That is not a daunting process at all. You were just given 3 weeks, not even to write an episode, to plan an episode, and then write it. And you give it to somebody else, and they ultimately do whatever the fuck that happens with it. That's incredible.
The writers' rooms on the 4 shows that I've done, that's Sports Night, The West Wing, Studio 60, and The Newsroom, work entirely differently than writers' rooms on other shows, because I'm writing different episodes. While I'm writing an episode, I have a leader in the room, the person running the room. I can come in and say, what are you guys thinking about? And they'll say, what if Josh is subpoenaed to appear in front of a committee and this happens, that kind of thing. We'll start banging out that story. So they're just trying to break stories. It was an ordinary day when all of a sudden, what makes this night different from...
That's... He can walk into an entire room of writers and say, like, hey, what are we doing about this? It's incredible. So you've got 5, 6 working for Aaron Sorkin, some of the top writers in the in the world at the time, probably, or in the country at the time, writing his stuff, and he just says, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And they're like, "We're going to do this." Oh, okay. I mean, it's insane, you know.
All other nights. That's how stories and drama go. That's how our writers' room works. My shows were run like not a well-oiled machine. Thanks a lot for your question. Shah Ali Riyadh, have you been inspired or influenced by the quality of writing of particular TV shows and or movies? For me, my writing was greatly influenced by Breaking Bad, you say, and Northern Exposure. Two great shows to be influenced by. Big fans of both, and the answer is yes. I've been influenced by the writing of a lot of movies and TV shows. I'm kind of an accidental screenwriter. I'm a playwright who fakes his way through movies and television shows by adding sort of just enough visual stuff so that you don't realize what you're really watching as a play. And so I've been influenced by all the great playwrights whose plays I've read or sometimes been lucky enough to see. I've been influenced.
So, Aaron Sorkin is known for his dialogue. He is a playwright. Think about plays. What do plays lack? Setting. They lack setting. They are a couple of people on a stage. You can do dramatic things on a stage. I've seen amazing things done on a stage with settings, but you're still on that stage. You can't change the setting. You are more reliant on the dialogue than anything. It's all dialogue. Nothing. No one's gonna stop and look at a sunset. Nobody's gonna, a plane's not gonna crash, or if it does, it's gonna be people reacting to that plane crashing. You're not gonna allowed to witness a plane crash on stage. Of your average stage show, it's gonna be all dialogue. That's why we get musicals on stage shows. That way we get operas where people are singing, because there's just singing, dancing. That's what you got. Singing, dancing, and narration, because you're not going to be doing much with the actual stage.
Influenced by a lot of TV shows. Pretty much any good television show today, I think a show that you would consider good, is following in the footprints that Larry Gelbart left when he created the TV series MASH. He was the first one to say that sitcoms don't have to be sitcoms. They don't have to be silly. Just because they're funny, they can tell real stories and moving stories. So I would say that I was heavily influenced by Larry Gelbart, to be sure. So thanks a lot for your question. J.D. May asks, what are your best tips for writing villain characters? Okay, that's a great question. And my best tip is that you, J.D., cannot think of them as a villain. You can't judge the character. You, the writer, you can't judge the character. You have to be able to empathize with that character. Find something about that character that is like you too.
Yeah, all good villains don't see themselves as villains. All good villains see themselves as a good guy doing, unless you're dealing with a comedy. All good villains see what they're doing as the just thing.
And then you have to write that character like they're making their case to God why they should be allowed into heaven. I don't know if you've ever seen, the first movie I wrote was based on the first play that I wrote, A Few Good Men, and you probably know You Can't Handle the Truth. That whole You Can't Handle the Truth scene from Nicholson in the courtroom, that is Nicholson's character making his case to God why he should be allowed into heaven, even though he has committed manslaughter, okay? Even though he's responsible for the death of a Marine private, he's defending it, why it was actually a good thing to do. So, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, or Nicholson and A Few Good Men, or anybody else.
Think of Thanos in Endgame. You could say the same thing about him. Definitely. I mean, hugely making his case to God as why he should be allowed into heaven. He wanted the ultimate power so that he could relieve the universe of half of its occupants, so that there would be no starvation. So that everybody would be relieved of the burden of humanity, basically, or overcrowding or whatever. That's a good one.
The audience could think of them as a villain, but not you. The real Gavin JT asks, what do you need to be successful? If there was a real answer to that, everyone would be successful, right? Okay, so you need talent. There are some things about writing that can be taught and learned, and there are some things about writing that can't be. And those things that can't be, that's usually what we mean when we talk about talent. Whether it's writing or playing the violin, there's stuff that can be taught and there's stuff that can't be. You need practice. In that regard, it's also like playing the violin. You need to do it a lot and keep doing it. Yes. Be a diagnostician. When you see a movie you don't like or an episode of television you don't like, don't be like your friends who don't necessarily want to be writers, who are just saying, oh God, that sucked, man, and they're just making jokes about everything. Go ahead and make jokes, and it's okay to say that sucked, but then when everyone leaves and you're going to sleep, try to think about what was wrong. Same thing when you love something, okay? So when you're done with the experiential thing, think about what was so good about that scene. What was so good about that moment? Was it the little push-in that the camera did? Was it the way that the joke was set up? Was it the fact that it wasn't scored at all? It was completely dry? Or was the whole scene saved by score? I know when I'm talking about score, it doesn't sound like writing things, but it is. So that, a little bit of luck. Thanks a lot for the question.
That and a little bit of luck.
These were great questions. Thanks a lot. And let us know what you thought.
What no BS screenwriting advice can you give to young screenwriters or even older who've never sold something and think that they can make a living at this?
Well, you got to really be realistic. You have to look at the steps involved. And what is your end game? You know, do you want to get a movie made? Is it a small movie? What kind of movie is it? Are you writing a kind of studio type script? Or are you writing kind of a small intimate thing that would be made for, $500,000? So you have to kind of set the parameters of what you want to do, and kind of take it from there. Because if you're a young screenwriter and you want to do this for a living, I mean, you need to write a couple samples and write some scripts. You need to be around the film business. TV's given a lot of opportunities to, being on writing staffs. There's so many TV shows now, too. That's a great way to becoming a writer. You can become a writer's assistant, get to know the working writers, and you'll actually get paid taking notes, doing things, and learn how it all works, and that will help you with jobs. If you're a little bit older, I mean, you should really work on your screenplays, but also determine what do you want to do. Is it something that you want to try to get made on your own? Do you want to try, like it's a little bit different. Are you writing a John Wick movie or are you writing a, small intimate thing? Because if it's a John Wick movie, that means you have to sell it through the studio system. That's very hard to break into until you are working at a certain level. It does happen, but you usually have to work your way up. You don't just, all of a sudden you're not up for these gigantic jobs of writing, $100 million films. So that's a whole kind of skill set into itself. So my advice would be just keep working, but work on your craft, because people don't do that. They don't, they don't take the time to actually keep rewriting and learning to write. They write one thing and they think, here it is, world, and that's why it doesn't get made, and then they get frustrated. But I think anybody who's going to if you're determined and you want to take, 10 years of your life working super hard to get somewhere, you can get somewhere. You can get some movies made. You can do it for a living, but you have to really buckle down and be okay, am I gonna save enough money for a year? That's kind of what I did. I said, I'm just gonna save enough money so I don't have to work for a year, focus on this. Or just really, and being in LA is a big part of it too. It really is. Unfortunately, it's hard to become, a professional screenwriter when you're in Missouri or somewhere, because a lot of the connections you make and people you meet. I ran into a friend of mine who's a big producer at the Coffee Bean one day. I hadn't seen her in a while, and she said, what are you working on? I go, well, we got this zombie thing. And she goes, oh, call me later. And then we got paid to write it for a huge company. So it's
but those are relationships I developed for a long time. But if I wasn't in LA, I wouldn't have ran into her. You know, it's these are just things that, you know, happen. And, you know, so that's another part of it too. So you have to be in the game. You have to be around it. You can't just, you know, be outside of it, because there's a lot to learn, a lot of people to meet. And it's all about relationships too.
What year was this that you had saved up the money so that you could live for a year?
I think it was 2005.
Oh, okay. So the economy was doing well. So things
Yeah,
were
I produced a movie with David Boreanaz, and then I did a big music video and got paid well on both those. So I was like, okay, now's the time. So yeah, because I didn't want to keep producing films, because producing's fun. I like producing, but it's different. It's not that creative. So I was just like, now's the time. So what I did is I just planned for a whole year. It's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on this. And it worked. But I'd been in the business and worked in the business and knew people. So it wasn't, you know, coming out from somewhere and moving to LA in a small apartment, just going, okay, I got a year to make it. But, you know, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's not, the good thing about screenwriting, it doesn't take a ton of money to do it. You don't, I mean, if you want to make a short film, that you have to hire a crew, you have to shoot, you know, to write. You know, even the other day, a really big A-list director, I'm not going to say it was, he goes, writing's free. You know, if you want to just sit and write and do as many drafts as you want, it's your time, but it doesn't cost you anything.
So day one of that, like, we're doing this, I'm not taking any new commitments on. What was did you like schedule things out? Did you have it on a calendar? Today is the
I
first
wish I
day.
was that, I wish I was that organized. It was a lot of intuition, just like, okay, now feels like the time. You know, so no, it wasn't. I wish it was more planned out, but, you know, sometimes, you know, some of this stuff just happens. But you have to be in the game for it to happen. You know, I put myself in the situation where it's like, okay, this is all I'm going to do, and just talk to people about it. You know, annoyed agents that I knew. I was like, hey, I wrote this script. I'm working on this script. And they didn't care, you know, even though I knew them. You know, they're like, great, good luck. But I was like, okay, this is the time now to be really focused on just, and not really having a plan B.
And how many hours a day did you write during that year?
Probably like 3 or 4. But I think after 4 hours, you get a little bit of like diminished returns. Now that doesn't mean the other 5 or 6 hours a day I'm not thinking about the writing. Like, but physically sitting there behind the keyboard, usually you try to limit to like 4 hours, because after 4 hours you start getting, if the work starts getting a little like, you know, not there, you know, you're not sharp, why keep writing? But I'm always thinking about things. Like a lot of things when I write, I don't touch keyboard till I've figured out the whole, like I said, the whole first act, the second act turn. And I can sit down one day and write 20 pages, but I've thought about it for 2 or 3 weeks and maybe just wrote out in beats what's going to happen. And then, you know, it's not the best 20 pages in the world, but I can do it one day in a couple hours, but I know where everything's going to fit and what the beats are, and then I'll go back and rewrite the dialogue and rework the scenes, but I know what's going to happen.
So after a year, did you say, okay, time to start making money again, or it just naturally progressed?
I think everybody would kind
started
of
happening.
Kind of know that, you know, like usually when I write, I get an idea in my head that plays out like a movie. And it's usually, I guess it is about the first, no, it's not the first 20 pages. It's probably the first, that original thing is usually like 5 to 10 pages, 5 to 8 pages. And it's just the opening scene, or feels like the opening scene, and then sometimes it changes and it's not the opening scene. But for the one that I'm writing right now, Seekers, I don't know what it's called, Seekers, I think. That I got the opening scene for, and the song that went along with it. And that was maybe 10 pages, 8 to 10 pages, 5 to 8 pages. Yeah, but not 20. Did I know what was going to happen after that? No. I just wrote it and it just kept coming out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, got lucky in that sense.
very nice. And then that film, you ended up selling it?
Yeah, the second script we wrote.
Second script, okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was the one that didn't get made, but yeah, I got paid for that, and that was a good feeling. I think that was the first time I ever got paid to be creative. You know, I'd worked on films, but that's a little bit different kind of creativity. You know, as being a producer, but being creative, it's like the greatest feeling in the world to like do something creative and get paid well for it. You're like, what? This is actually, you can actually do this, and that's a big inspiration. Once you get that once, it becomes kind of a rush. It's like, oh hey, this is better than working at Starbucks. Not that I ever worked at Starbucks, but, you know, or, you know, going to an office.
Yeah, much better than going to an office, yeah. Did you have office jobs?
No. Oh. I mean, in the film industry I did.
Oh, okay.
I was very lucky. But I always kind of angled myself to where I had a cool job because I didn't want to be bored at work. That was like the only mantra I had. It was like, I don't want to be bored.
Final draft. Must have. Must have, because once you finish your screenplay, you can hand it off to other people and they can. There's pieces of the application where you can set up camera shots and you can set up like actor staging and stuff like that. There's a bunch of stuff you can add to it. So the screenplay in Final Draft is just one facet of what you can do in Final Draft. Kind of like the first piece.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and get access to over...
Dear Edith, holy heavens.
Don't worry about me, Constable. I rise above it.
The obscene little Hampton letter.
I just said this.
I've had one now.
My name is Emily Carmichael. I am a writer and director of action adventure movies. I'm one of the writers of Pacific Rim Uprising.
We call them kaiju.
Right now I'm writing Jurassic World 3. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to receive a writing prompt that I have never seen before, and I am going to be strictly on the clock to write a scene based on that prompt. And when I am done, I am going to get a round of studio notes. So this is not normal. This is not normally how the process of writing occurs. I am not presently nervous. Time to read the prompt. Okay, the year is 2048. That's an excellent year for it to be. The main character has to encounter her old colleague at her local protein depository. We'll need to include some object inside his jacket. The scene must lead into a chase sequence.
First of all, protein depository. So you're not picking up protein, you're dropping it off. That's disgusting.
Excellent. Functional, serviceable, sci-fi world building. Love it. Haley, 35. Glenn, 66. All right, here's what I'm thinking about this. She could be running from Sci-Fi Police. I love Sci-Fi Police. I love running from Sci-Fi Police. It's one of my favorite action beats. She could be running from Glenn, or she could be running from both of them. So a lot of times I will sort of like dive into the most interesting part of the scene and then circle back around to do the beginning and the end, and watching the whole scene sort of like close in on itself and watching those gaps close up is really fun. Creates a feeling of satisfaction, feels like you're getting your job done, feels like everything is falling into place. Let's do this. Text, front of protein, packet, depository, dispensary, depository.
What does that mean?
So I'm gonna get that moment where the almost in her ear. In general, if somebody is going to leap out of their chair when they see somebody else, or they're going to be clearing their throat before they say something, I try to get it into a parenthetical because a parenthetical takes up a little less vertical space than a screen direction. One of the things that you'll see me do a lot is you'll see me try to get anything that's 2 lines to be 1 line, because why do in 2 lines what you could do in 1 line? Now, I get to choose whether I'm going to spend my time fleshing out this chase sequence, which could be really fun, but we have to establish what this object is. Look, it's a sci-fi story. It could be anything. He could have, like, a radioactive chinchilla in his jacket, and she could run away from the police, and those 2 things wouldn't have to be clear yet how they're related, because this is clearly a scene at the beginning of the story. But I like the idea that, like, as soon as Haley sees the object, she knows what it is. So I like the idea that it is something like this. Is that... ... is that my... So I think these 2 have a criminal past. I think she has entrusted him with something, and the fact that he's using it, or that he's brought it out into the world, is now going to get both of them in trouble. I'm going to circle back and just make sure that I have the basic establishing things, because I don't know how much time I have left. I like to put ... in front of something a character says to indicate that they take a long pause, because it's the only way to indicate that a character stops or pauses without using an extra line. What I want Glenn to say is a variation on "I thought you skipped town," but because it's sci-fi, let's use that as an opportunity to, like, flesh out this world a little bit more, and let's say... Moonside is too silly somehow. Let's just give him an outer ring. Is it an outer ring of planets? Is it an outer ring of factories? It's not my job to figure that out right now. I'm just trying to make a good scene. In a sci-fi setting, leaving town might be something really different, and having a character ask that in such an offhanded way, like, "I thought you left the surface," or "Hey, I thought you rotated to the outer ring." It's a fun way to start to hint and to start to open up that this sci-fi world is unlike our own, and that it has a deep history, and that there's a lot going on there. So we've set up the circumstances. Now we gotta figure out what this object is. Is that... My fallback here is safecracker. Like, there might be an object that would be a safecracker, but I kind of want something cooler than that. Could it be... Let's name it Arno. Off screen. So I just sort of casually said that Arnaud has a digital voice. Obviously what's happening is a small robot is talking to Haley from inside Glenn's jacket. And I just want to establish that that voice happens suddenly, that it's a little bit surprising, and it needs a little bit more description. I can't just offhandedly say Arnaud's digital voice emerges from Glenn's jacket. I need to describe the voice a little bit more, but I don't have time, so I'm gonna like just make sure that I've sort of like fleshed out the elements of the scene and maybe circle back to it. And then I love this idea that like there's a betrayal involved. I love this. Why is this line breaking weird? Male or female policeman? I'm just making policeman. Wait. I don't want to make it a policeman in like a mask and a white suit because that's so lame for science fiction. A policeman in a regal, almost Victorian era suit. Catch it. Sight of Glenn and talks to a wrist communicator. Grabs Arnaud. How did I spell Arnaud? She is in line, somebody bumps her elbow, and now I'm gonna add just a little line here so we know what's happening. And then, at that moment, a tiny digital voice speaks from somewhere inside. Make sure all these little guys are OS. So I blasted that scene out really quickly. So I'm gonna circle around back to the top. I'm gonna see if there's anything that I wanna change. So I'm just basically gonna read it to myself. There wasn't any work there. This could probably be better. I'm just gonna say it's tapped out. Seems a little more casual and realistic. This is probably not worth 2 lines. I'm just gonna stick that there. I'm gonna put this in italics. I'm putting this in italics to indicate to the reader that yes, what they're reading is unusual and sci-fi-ish. Does Glenn have 1 N or 2? Scroll over. Glenn, I guess Glenn has 2 N's because it's sci-fi. Big feature of fantasy and sci-fi worlds is like people's names having more than the usual number of letters. All right, so maybe I'm gonna put, maybe I'm gonna give this a different font because it's in a digital voice. If I put this in a different font, somebody's gonna love it and somebody's gonna hate it, but you just gotta take your choice. Let's try Futura. That is way too aggressive. How about Avenir? I like it. Arnaud is gonna speak in Avenir. Arnaud is also going to have only 1 line there. Because again, Arnaud was just repeating himself, so there's no point in wasting an extra line on that. Not that there isn't often a very good reason for characters to repeat themselves. Characters repeat themselves often when they're having a hard time taking something in. That's also good because that might be something that the audience needs to hear a few times. Cool. Surrounding cops draw weapons. I mean, that was a little fast. It's a little fast for a legal law enforcement crackdown in the future, but whatever, it's fine for the moment. Okay, good. Basically, we're done. Woo! That was an easy one. I love it. I'd love to do more with it. I think it's fun. One of the things.
Okay. So the one thing I'll say is that so she's supposed to get editor's notes, producer's notes now and make changes on the notes. But the one thing I will say about this, regardless of how you feel about the story or her, is that you sometimes are asked to actually turn stuff out that quickly. So, knowing how to get your point across in short little sentences like that, using very small amounts of description, small amounts of dialogue to get your point across, and turning stuff out very fast is what a professional writer has to do. Not that fast, but in some cases that fast.
Things this video is revealing is how poorly I spell. But let that inspire you. You don't need to be perfect at spelling in order to be a writer, or even competent at spelling at all. All right, first round of revisions. Studio notes. Can we flesh out the character of Haley a bit more here? We want to know more about who she is. Great, this is a great opportunity to talk about all the different ways that characters tell us who they are. Second draft. The first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna emphasize this moment of decision that I've already given Haley, just to make sure that the studio executive didn't miss it. So I'm gonna do that right now. Haley clocks the surrounding police. I wonder if we can give Haley the opportunity to walk away from this. That's a good idea. The number one best way for a character to tell us who they are is to undertake or make an unusual decision. So let's do that. Police are encircling Glenn. It's a little fast for them to encircle Glenn, but whatever, it's fine. They're sci-fi police, they're very efficient. Police. Glenn puts his hands in the air.
That works.
Okay, got it. I know what we're gonna do. So generally, you are not supposed to make the director feel like you are telling them where to put the camera, because that is the director's job. You can, however, hopefully suggest to the director or put an image in their mind of something that they might like to do with the camera. One of the things that I really like to do is I like to say, that lets us know that the character is having some sort of an emotional experience. They're reeling, they're dizzy. But to me, it suggests a camera rotation. It suggests that the camera is going to spin around her. And that's helping to highlight the idea that this character is about to make an important decision. Just to make clear that she's gotten herself in a lot of trouble. There we go. So we gave our character a chance to like walk away and she didn't take it. Ooh, what's this? I am getting a text. Just got word about a contractual change. We need to include the doctor in this scene. Oh, I love it. So the note is that we have to put the doctor in this scene, and the doctor is capitalized, indicating that this is a character who we've seen before, who has relationships with some of the characters who are already here. We have a tense scene already because we have Haley who's in conflict with Glenn, and both of them who are in conflict with the police. So if we add a new character to the scene, we want that new character to make the scene more interesting and more dramatic. We want that character to make everybody's lives harder and not easier. Is the doctor there practicing medicine? Is Haley injured? Is she being tended to? Is there a... Haley waits in line. A doctor peddling the doc. So we know who this character is. It's dispirited.
What?
I'm going to say that this is a doctor who goes around in a pushcart and administers medicine to people in this sci-fi world. I just kind of like the idea that the doctor would be, that the doctor's trade would not be irrelevant to her presence in this scene. I also think that since we're about to have a chase sequence, I'd like to see that pushcart be utilized in the chase sequence. It's always nice when you can have a vehicle in there and kind of get it in there surreptitiously, like bring it onto the scene for what seems like another reason, and then somebody has the opportunity to use it during the chase.
Yeah. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't. So, unless this was established earlier in the screenplay. Why? Could you just pause? All I asked was for you to pause. Can't do this. Unless this is established earlier, you can't just say Haley waits in line dispirited. The pushcart doctor tends her elbow while she waits. There's a lot that happened prior to this scene that we were not aware of. You can't just say these things would have to be well established prior to this scene. You can't just say these things. Why is she getting it? Okay, what happened to her elbow? And why is what is a pushcart doctor?
I like this.
What does that entail? What does a pushcart doctor entail? Like, what am I looking at? I have a kind of an image in my head, but it's a sci-fi world. I don't know what that is.
This person has a problem with their cochlear implant.
What? Did you say elbow or earlobe? What in fudge?
Just like a little line management for this world, and maybe this character is going to be somebody who tries to get Haley not to make this precipitous choice that Haley is making. She's going to be somebody who tries to get Haley not to run away.
You three okay? I do implants. You three okay? What? 2 people in front. So many implants.
So having a character discover information that they need by reading it, like reading it in a newspaper, is one of the least interesting ways that characters can discover information. One of the most interesting ways is to have another character deliver that information to them for a motivated reason. Because characters taking action on the basis of their internal motivations is the essence of drama. The gears in Haley's elbow, that's like 2 on the nose, but like the So when I put a line in italics, it means something really particular, and it means that a character is acting the line, is speaking the line in a really pointed way. Like they have some subtext, and they're leaning so hard into the subtext that it's almost starting to sound like it's text. All right, Blum's Haley, Glenn.
Very super.
Okay, we got a sci-fi pushcart doctor, goes around with her pushcart, administering people's various implants. We've got Haley has some implants in her elbow that maybe need fancier medical attention. She's a prior relationship with this doctor. The doctor is like, just walk away from this girl, it's not worth it. Haley bucks that advice, grabs the robot and runs. I'm happy with this. All right, another note. This is good, but we need this to be Haley's introductory scene. Make sure we accomplish that okay, thanks in advance. I think that what it means is there needs to be a moment right at the top of the screenplay, right as soon as we meet that character, that exists to tell us who she is. We need to set the scene a little bit more, and we need to say a little bit more about her. Third draft. Haley.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, in the introductory scene, what I would say is that you want to present them in their everyday life. This is what I say. In the beginning, you should show them in their everyday life so that we can juxtapose it to everything else in the screenplay. Something incredible is going to happen to this person. We need to know what their everyday life looks like so that we know what incredible is as compared to mundane. Let's see what she does. Her introductory is just that she's 35 and beat up utilitarian foes. I mean, that's pretty weak.
All right, I know what we're gonna do. Haley flinches a little. So if a character is going to endure something painful, the amount that they flinch tells you what kind of character they are and also what kind of movie it is.
I apologize, but I don't think a bit says anything about anyone's character. Haley flinches just a bit. I mean, okay, I get that, but like, there is no description there. That doesn't say anything. So if she's a really, really strong, tough person, she wouldn't flinch at all. If she flinches just a bit, then we know that she has some weaknesses, that she's a little soft. Why is she a little soft? I don't know. I wouldn't make a point about it unless you were going to make the point about it. You made a point about it. You made a very indescript description about it that really said nothing about the character. But you made a point of saying that this was going to say something about the character that said nothing about the character. You know, I think it's one or the other. The character either flinches not at all, so we know that
A nitpick that people really like to have is a writer saying in dialogue something that could really be conveyed in an unspoken way between actors, because that's a great part of the actor's craft. And a great part of the writer's craft is knowing that we don't say everything we're thinking and feeling out loud. Okay, so we just learned that Haley is an android who makes bad jokes, and that's telling the audience who she is. I'm gonna see if I can revise this a little bit, because that is a really bad joke, and maybe this character can announce herself by making a little bit of a better bad joke. So I'm gonna workshop that for a second and see if I can make it better. One of the ways that we can do that is have the joke play a little bit better for the audience. Like, let's make the audience believe that this is the first time that Haley is discovering that she's an android. And I think I'm actually gonna do that in the screen direction. All right, first of all, let's move the filaments after the incision so that her skin gets cut open and then we see what's inside. All right, a little more participation from the doctor.
So she should overreact. She shouldn't flinch just a little bit. She should really be like, shh.
Ah! All right, good. Delete this screen. Delete these. Great. Good. All right. I don't know if that is the best character introduction that I've ever written, but it is a character introduction, and somebody will not have the note about that scene. I didn't know who this character was supposed to be. It was unusual for me, certainly, with all of you watching. If I was writing a scene as part of a movie, I would spend a lot more time on it. I would go over it many more times. But I still really enjoyed the experience, and I still feel like something kind of special happened.
So that is all I have time for this evening. There should be another one is about to start, but I'm about to start yawning and
Best scene, 2020 AD. An excerpt
we'll
for
finish
Wild
on
Sound.
this.
Interior spacecraft Brandy, residence of Campbell James, day. Bill massages his shoulder while he shoots quick glances at his host, so not to overwhelm his brain.
I do apologize. I've gone to the trouble, though it was no trouble, to replace your tea for something a bit more accommodating, I do hope.
A silver cup sits before Bill.
A silly question?
As the stout man with the head of an elephant extends a stubby gray arm to collect a cup, his short, flat-footed legs nearly touch the floor.
Am I? We? Well, not you, but we. My crew? Are we dead now? Is this what dead looks like?
Campbell shoots forward on his cane.
Excellent starting point, William.
Bill is sent reeling back into his chair, startled by the sudden charge of the Asian elephant man's head.
So many of these conversations over these countless centuries, and no one, surprisingly enough, I must admit, no one has ever started there. Usually we end there.
Bill gawks at the gold ring that adorns Campbell's trunk.
Yes, your turbulence, my doing, yes, but sanctioned, always sanctioned.
Campbell removes a monocle from his tweed jacket and wipes it with a kerchief, then affixes it over his left eye.
Messy business, death. Takes time to die, William. 20 minutes, in fact, mostly just the convincing mess-making.
Campbell shivers in his chair.
So, wait now, what?
The answer to your question, William, as far as everyone outside this vessel is concerned, you and your crew are dead. Trust me, William, on board this vessel, you're perfectly fine.
Okay, but what about outside of the vessel?
Campbell slaps Bill on the knee.
Oh, William, just like a first-form student, you're brimming with notions. Isn't it all just so invigorating?
No, it isn't. It's frightening and painful.
Bill rubs his throbbing knee.
Are you a Buddhist, Mr. Warren?
No, Irish Catholic.
Then why would you believe yourself to be dead? Did Catholicism take up the Asian elephant as a sacred tome?
Not that I'm aware of, but I have been away from the church for quite a while.
I can assure you, they have not.
Campbell leans forward on his cane.
Perception, William. Perception, as you well know, is everything. Each of us takes the sum total of every experience we have ever had, regardless of how minuscule or insignificant. We take all these experiences and we pile them up into a tower, if you will.
Bill picks up his cup, enticed by its smell.
As each experience occurs, it is placed atop of all previous experience and filters through all the other experience we have had. Then it settles on the bottom and forms an opinion, influenced by all the previous layers of experience.
Bill takes a sip and visibly relaxes.
Regardless of how misleading, distorted, or incorrect that opinion may be, it is forged into your tower of influencing experiences.
Bill's eyes glaze over as he sinks deeper into his chair.
Not only that, but one cannot conceive or even perceive something which happens outside of their own personal experience.
Campbell pauses for questions.
Capiche?
Bill thinks for a moment.
No.
Campbell raises his trunk high in the air, drinks the contents of his cup, and slams the cup down on the table. Smack.
We'll work on that.
End scene.
That is all we have time for tonight.